everyone, Meet Merp here. I'm giving you guys the version 1.1 to the free-to-play 2024 guide for Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. This video and updated guide is just going to have some minor revisions to the guide I posted in January, as well as an overhaul in the presentation and some infographics to make life a little bit easier, as well as giving like a bigger picture of what I believe is foundationally the best path going forward for a new account in 2024. The game's constantly changing, new things are being added, and so I caveat that with this is just a guide from one individual, and you can take parts of this as you wish. You can change it to however you see fit, but I hope that this guide helps you in your journey from 1 to pretty much mid-game in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. So here is our infograph for those that are not wanting to watch it. The overarching goal of this guide is to focus on exec first. As you can see from the pyramid in the center, he's at the top, so we need to focus on him first. And then either focus on Jabba or Leia. The choice between these two heavily depends on the type of currencies that you're getting through guild events. If you're not in a decent enough guild, whether they're doing Rise of the Empire or doing decent in Dark Side GOTB, my recommendation would be to go for Leia. If you are in a decent guild doing Rise of the Empire, getting those guild event tokens income, then I would heavily suggest Jabba. Some of the first few teams we're going to focus on are Iden Troopers. As you see on the left side of the screen, we will also be focusing on Bastila Jedi, and that will be your dark side and light side teams. Right below that in the purple box will be the journeys that we'll be going through and the characters we're going to be using to get those journey characters. On the top right in pink, those are the suggested Zetas. I believe that would be most beneficial, especially if you're following this guide. Right underneath that in blue is showing the initial fleet. So Executrix of Geos and 2 other dark side ships. Right below that in green, that is our assault battle teams that we'll be using. That'll get us 4 assault battles, some on Challenge Tier 2, some on Challenge Tier 1, but fundamentally those 3 teams are more than enough to get your account foundation and income pretty steady. And then lastly, in the bottom center are the relics that I'm suggesting on this path. And as you can see, the majority of those relics are executor requirements, but we also put in a couple extra ones early on, such as CLS Han and Chewbacca, to help out the CLS team. Now moving on to the journeys that this guide's going to be able to complete. We have R2, CLS, Emperor Palpatine, and Chewbacca. And for R2-D2, you can either use Iden or General Veers, and then fill the rest up with troopers. It is a very old event. It is a very easy event. You will very easily get R2 at 7 stars, which is also a requirement for CLS. So for CLS, this is the hard team that you're going to use, and when you use this team, lo and behold, you can use that same team to unlock Emperor Palpatine, which Emperor Palpatine isn't necessary for this journey, but he has a very amazing lead, especially when the Zeta is applied, and can work with Darth Vader early on, and then later on towards the mid and end game, you can have Star Killer on that team. If you're having troubles with Emperor Palpatine, whether it's his 6 or 7 star event, you can just wait. Again, no big deal. He's just for Grand Arena, a little bit of Conquest. So you can just wait and use CLS instead. For Chewbacca, we will be using the bounty hunters that we're going to be acquiring anyways for Executor. For Grandmaster Yoda, since we're doing Bastila Shan Jedi, those Jedi will easily be able to complete Grandmaster Yoda's event. For C-3PO, these are the Ewoks that I'm suggesting. And then lastly, Beskar Armor Mando, and this is the required squad that is needed to unlock him, which is also a requirement for the Executor. Now for the farming plan, this is a rough estimate, but we'll go over how I believe is the best way to spend your normal energy, your cantina, and your fleet energy, and discuss some quick points with that as we go along. Block this out in a 12-month schedule, so obviously you can adjust the months as needed from whenever you start the game. You don't have to start in January, start whenever you like. But in a rough estimate, you should be able to get Executor within a year now. And the reason why I believe this is because of the change that had happened with Mark I tokens becoming a new thing in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes within the last year or so. That has vastly accelerated the farms that we have and reduced the amount of normal energy and cantina energy that is needed to get the journeys done. So going right into it, for our normal energy, we're going to be focusing on Iden and Vulture Droid, basically staying on that node until Vulture Droid's completed. We'll also be working on Bastila, Grief, Range Trooper, and Veers. And as new nodes come online, you can start swapping things in and out. So eventually you'll have Piet unlocked. You'll want to work on his node until he's finished. The IG-2K, Xanadu, and Houndstooth nodes will all take 6 months to complete. Then Wicket we'll want to focus on as soon as possible as well, because he is the gate in which it is required to get C-3PO and essentially the meta squad for Commander Luke Skywalker, which that team will be with you for the majority of your Galaxy of Heroes career. And then to wrap up, we have Zombie that we need for the Night Sister squad, the Imperial TIE Bomber node, which again is another 6-month node and is a requirement for the Executor, Cara Dune for BAM, Mother Talzin again for the Night Sister team, and then go back to finishing Hyena Bomber whenever you can for the Malevolence fleet. Now, if you follow, or if you've been following my free-to-play series on my weekly updates, you can kind of see that my guide that I'm presenting here is a little bit different than what I'm farming, and that's just because I'm trying to push the envelope as quickly as possible, but what's presented here is definitely doable. Essentially, all you have to consider is any unaccelerated farms or single drop farms will take approximately 6 months to do, and accelerated farms that drop 2 shards per attempt or has the chance to is approximately 3 to 4 months to complete. So if you find yourself wanting to change some things around, there's no problem in that. In the week 9 update, I showed that I took Bastila Shan out of my farming and I moved up Houndstooth right away, and I'm also double farming him, which in essence will turn Houndstooth into an accelerated farm, so I'm trying to get him done as soon as possible since his ship, along with Bosk, is very, very key for bounty hunters and for fleet arena. So move these around as you see fit, whatever works for you, but this is essentially what would get you done in essentially a 12-month period. For our Cantina energy, we are going to be working on Geo Soldier until he's 7 stars, and then Geo Spy until he's 7 stars, since they are the backbone of our Fleet Arena team. And then we're going to work on the TIE Silencer and the Imperial TIE Fighter up until we get the requirements for the Zeta Challenge, which both ships need to be at 5 stars. If you find yourself having time before Geobrood Alpha node next, or Death Trooper, then go ahead and continue farming for the Imperial TIE Fighter, since that's a requirement for the Executor. But the moment you get the Geobrood Alpha node unlocked, I would just stop with Imperial TIE Fighter. You get it through the shop, it's no big deal, and then really pump in that Cantina energy into Geobrood Alpha, which will make our Geo team. And then lastly, Chief Chirpa. With these Cantina farms, they're the quickest farms. As you can see, the Geo Soldier has been condensed into, for the presentation purposes, it shows a month, but I believe I got them done in like 2.5 or 3 weeks. So your mileage will vary. If you find yourself completing what's presented here early, pump everything that you have from Cantina energy into signal data, which is used for relics. Now moving on to our fleet energy, the first 2 that we're going to want to get to as soon as possible is Sunfac and Slave 1. Again, in my free-to-play series, the Sunfac ship I actually double farmed because I was concerned that I wouldn't get his ship done in time for the Zeta Challenge. I'm not regretful that I did it because it is needed, but I'm not necessarily sure how much of the double farming was needed. But we got his ship there, so we're good. So now we're just regularly farming his ship, and same thing with Slave 1. Now later on, we'll get the TIE Advance node and Mandalorian node done. When those pop up, go ahead and slot them in when you got the time after Sunfac and Slave 1 are done. A slight error in the presentation, Mandalorian doesn't take 6 months to complete. It takes a whole lot less, especially since we farmed him a little bit early on, but he should be done in about 2 or 3 months. And then if you find yourself done with the fleet energy, you're going to be working on Gear 12 and Gear 12 plus pieces, or even some purple pieces. Like on my main account, I'm pumping every bit of fleet energy I have into med packs for relicking characters. Now moving on to our dark side team, as I alluded to before, we are going to be working with Iden as our lead, and then we're going to have some troopers. So we'll have Stormtrooper, who's easy to get, Magma Trooper is very easy to get from the Galactic War store, Colonel Stark, a very good character, especially with the Veer's troopers, and then eventually he'll slot in with Iden way later on. And then lastly, Range Trooper, a very key component to getting the challenge tier done as well. This team will last you quite some time. I don't foresee you getting around this team, especially since most of this team is going to be used for the assault battle. And then later on, when you start Grand Arena, just slap an Omicron on Iden, and you can leave her, I believe Gear 7 where I have her at is where she requires Cairo, which is a very precious resource early on. You can just keep her at that gear level, just level her up to the max level at 85, throw an Omni, throw some random troopers with her, and throw her on defense, and she'll do some work for you. Now moving on to our light side team, we have Bastila Shan as our lead. We'll be using Jedi Knight Anakin, Ahsoka Tano, Barriss, and Mace Windu. We will be farming up Bastila and Jedi Knight Anakin only for a little bit in the beginning. This team isn't needed for much right now, so Don't worry if you don't get the stars up on Bastila or Jedi Anakin. Ahsoka's gotten from Cantina, so we got time. We can get her maxed out. Varys from Mark 1, super easy. And Mace, I believe, is from Squad Arena. Also very easy to complete early on. But this team will do some work for you. Still a really good team, and there's some really good splits from this team from a Grand Arena perspective. And then Bastila Shan as well is a requirement for Jedi Knight Revan, which we will be going for way later on. And then something to note too with Jedi Knight Anakin, super awesome character, especially early on and into the mid game. Whenever you got time, you can farm up Qui-Gon Jinn, and as I'll present later on, you can throw an Omicron on Qui-Gon Jinn. They can be low gear, just pump gear and levels into Anakin, and that team will do some work for you as well in Grand Arena. Now moving on to fleets, we have the Executrix. That's one of the first starting fleets. We'll be using this fleet well into the early game until we unlock Executor and or Malevolence, whichever comes first for you. And then we will be using Geo Soldier, Geo Spy, Sunfac Ship, and our reinforcements will consist of Vulture Droid, TIE Silencer, and Imperial TIE Fighter. These last three will just be your reinforcements. There is some scenarios where you'll have Vulture Droid start and either Geo Soldier or Sunfac come in as a reinforcement. But to be honest, that's you got other things to worry about if you're worried about reinforcement issues. So my general guide, just have Vulture Droid as your first reinforcement, and then maybe you'll get to TIE Silencer or Imperial TIE Fighter as your second reinforcement. So now on to currency usage. I have this put up here, and we'll go into them individually. This is a quick snapshot of the different types of currency that we have, and then what we're going to be using those currencies for. So for Cantina, early on, it's very, very easy to max out Stormtrooper, as well as Boba Fett. Both are very good characters and last you quite some time. Stormtrooper is actually really, really good in the early game, especially in Galactic War under Iden. He is a tank by tag, but to be honest, outside of Iden, is probably one of the harder hitting troopers you can get early on. His basic just, it does a lot of damage. And then Boba Fett we want maxed out. He'll help carry the Scoundrels for your credit heist, which is an event that comes around once in a while, and it will be a huge boost to your credits. Then once you get those done, here are some others. In my free-to-play series, I'm finishing up Ahsoka, and then I'll probably just move on to Stormtrooper Han, then Qui-Gon Jinn and Old Daka as well. I'd probably do Old Daka next after Stormtrooper Han, and then leave Qui-Gon for last, just because Qui-Gon isn't a requirement for anything as of the time of this recording, and he's only used for GAC. Now moving on to Squad Arena, we want to max out Tarkin as soon as possible, since he is the pilot to our capital ship that we'll be using for the majority of this journey. And then we'll move on to Mace Windu, who also happens to be a pilot to a capital ship, the Endurance, but we won't be using that ship on this guide. But Mace Windu is still a fantastic Jedi, will be used for quite some time as well, and is a really, really good tank. Then once those are done, here are the others that we're going to need. We're going to need Princess Leia for CLS, and Emperor Palpatine if you want to go and get him. IG-88 is needed for the Executor. Asajj Ventress for the Night Sister team. And then I put Savage Opress on here. He's a very, very good character and can be quite a handful in early Grand Arena, only if you apply the Omicron to him. He's also pretty good for the Sith team for the assault battle, and will have his uses. But if you don't want to go for him, that's fine. Just dump everything else into Prestige, because you're in it as soon as the Executor comes out. Now for Galactic War, if you're leveling from 1, I would suggest just getting Magma Trooper right away and just max him out. He'll be a trooper that will be staying with Iden, especially when you do the splits between Veer's troopers and Iden troopers, and it's a relatively easy character to get early on. And then when you are below fleets, which I believe is 60, none of the fleet ships will show themselves in the Galactic War store, so you really only have one option to pick, is really Magma Trooper. That will help your account right away. But once you do hit 60, these ships will unlock as a potential to be bought from the Galactic War store, so go ahead and buy them up as soon as possible. I would prioritize the Geo ships 1000% over Imperial TIE Fighter. So, but I just put the Imperial TIE Fighter up here to show you that you can get that particular ship from this store as well. Then when you're done with all of those, you can throw stuff into Cad Bane, which is a requirement for the Executor, and then Poggle to round out your Geo team. Poggle is also a very key character if you prefer territory wars, which is, guild versus guild kind of stuff. His Omicron's very, very good, makes the Geo teams, even at low gear, it can do quite a lot for you. Now on to Fleet Arena. These are some of the highest priorities that we're going to want because they're rarest to show up on the shop. Kind of taking from what Darth Loquator has done in his previous guides, is I like the idea of having a bank of the Fleet Arena currency, and that's just because once in a while these 4 things will pop up in the store, and you just want to make sure that you have currency ready to go to buy them just in case. So in the beginning, I'd suggest just waiting, build up a bank. 2 to 3 grand is more than enough, to be honest. They're so infrequent at the shop, I doubt you'll go through that much, unless you're just really that lucky. And then just buy them up as soon as you see them. Grievous is needed for Malevolence, and this is the only way to get them. Razor Crest, you need them from Proving Grounds, which is a 4 million GP event that comes up post-Conquest. You'll get Razor Crest done way before. So this is the only other way to get Razor Crest. Darth Vader, you'll get a lot of his shards through achievements, and then you'll fill in the rest of the shards through here. And then the TIE Advance. And then if you have that bank, or you're just feeling up to it, go ahead and buy the Geo ships out of here. It's a way to accelerate those ships, even though they're farmable from other areas. That's okay. This journey is a marathon, not a sprint, so you have more than enough leeway to get the Geo ships through the Fleet Arena store. And then same thing with Slave 1. Yes, we're farming them from the Fleet Energy node, but if you want, you can just finish the farm early and move on to something else by buying up his shards through the Fleet Arena store. Now for Mark 1, kind of talked about this earlier. The Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 currencies is something relatively new in the lifespan of Galaxy of Heroes. Essentially, you get these Mark 1 tokens from doing raids, whether that's Heroic Pit, or the AT raid, or Sith Triumvirate, and the Speeder Bike raid. But essentially what you can do with these, especially early on, is we want to build out some teams, and for 200 Mark 1 tokens to have 10 shards of a character is insane value. Just absolutely insane. So early on, I spent all of my Mark 1s getting Sunfac and Colonel Stark done as soon as possible. Then once I was done with those, as you can see, there's a lot of other things we're going to want with Mark 1. You can get Barris pretty early on. I'll round out your Jedi team. Old Ben and Farm Boy Luke are now on here, so that means previous guides you can only get them from Cantina. Don't farm them in Cantina. We need Cantina for other things, and so just get these guys from the shops. Ewok Elders in this shop as well. Super easy to get. Used to be a hard farm, and then Talia is a farm that you can get on here instead of farming her node, and that'll help for the Night Sisters. Now for Han Solo, as you can see on here, he costs 700 tokens. There are 3 character shards that you could only get from raids originally. That is Han Solo, General Kenobi, and Darth Traya. Once Galaxy of Heroes swap to this Mark 1 currency, you can get their 10 shards for 700. So it's a lot less ratio-wise, but we still need Han Solo, so we're going to get him from the shop after we get everything else done. Now for your guild event tokens, for your get ones, you're just going to be spending them on Wampa and Hermit Yoda. Depending on how you want to go about it, my suggestion is just get Wampa done first. You throw in an Omicron, Relicer. She's a solo artist in Grand Arena. It's crazy. You'll use her for quite some time. And then Hermit Yoda, we're going to want him later on for all sorts of different teams. He's a great support for many different teams. But once you get those guys done, that'll free up your get ones for other stuff such as Cairo. Moving on to guild event tokens 2, we need to get the Malevolence done and the Negotiator before we start using those tokens on Cairo as well. My suggestion, and a lot of others would probably agree, is just get Malevolence unlocked, which should be at 5 stars. Malevolence works perfectly fine at 5 stars, doesn't require more than 2 reinforcements. You just have your Geo ships, your Hyena Bomber, and your Vulture Droid, and then you're done. Malevolence doesn't need any other ships with them. It can only work with Separatist ships anyways. So my suggestion, get Malevolence unlocked, then get Negotiator all the way to 7 stars, because Negotiator is at full effectiveness at 7 stars, and then go back to Malevolence and finish that ship off. Now for assault battles, these are events that come around usually once a month. Sometimes if CG is feeling extra nice, they'll give it to us a couple times. These events come around once a month, and they give us some really nice resources. It gives you some stuff such as Cairo. It also gives you some relic materials and signal data, and I believe is something that's foundational to get early on, and even mid-game and late-game players. Some players don't have teams made for these, and some of these teams are very, very easy to get. They require very little investment. Some require no relics, some require only 1 relic, and the teams I'm presenting to you here are what I believe to be the most efficient teams, because they require the least amount of gear and little to no Cairo. And Cairo early on is going to be a pain. So for Forest Moon and Rebel Roundup, that'll be our Imperial Trooper team, with Veers as a lead. And then you have Admiral Piet, Death Trooper, Range, and Colonel Stark. You only need the Zetas on Piet and Veers. I was able to do this with very, very not so good mods, and I was able to clear both of these assault battles at Challenge Tier 2 and 3-star to both. And once you 3-star one of these events, you never have to play it again. You can sim it from then on out, which will auto-complete it for you. So I have yet to see in my year plus of research and playing this game any other Imperial Trooper team that can do this as efficiently. There is a Gar Saxon Imperial Super Commando team that can do this really early and probably lower gear, but they don't lead anything efficiently early on in an account. So I believe this is what is the best for early game account to complete. Now for military might, that's going to be our CLS squad. This squad actually at Gear 12 can do it at Challenge Tier 1, but since we're going to be relicking CLS, Han, and Chewie early on, it most likely can do CT2 as well. You're just going to need 4 Zetas for the team. It's a bit pricier for a team, but this, man, CLS, that team's going to help you for a long time, very, very long time. Very good in Grand Arena, and then an amazing team in Conquest, which is an event mode that unlocks at 85, where it's like a PvE event and you face all sorts of different teams, and is a good way of getting, is actually the only way of getting shards for new characters such as like Darth Bane or Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. But CLS, outstanding team. So this is not a, you won't regret putting gear into these characters, and almost every single one of these characters, I think actually every single one of these characters is a requirement for some other Galactic Legend out there. So you're gonna need the relics in these characters anyways. And then lastly, Secrets and Shadows. That is our Night Sister team. The only one that does require DACA at Relic 5. The other teams technically don't need relics, but you'll put relics into them eventually, and that'll help your team out a whole lot more. But this team right here with Marin will get you Challenge Tier 3 when you decide to relic this team. It's not really advisable because they're not, besides Asajj and Marin, the rest aren't requirements for anything at this time. Marin's a requirement for a character called Jedi Knight Cal Kestis from the video games, who's outstanding, but for such an early farm, I wouldn't suggest getting Marin anything above, I think it's Gear 9, and then she requires Cairo after that, so just throw her at Gear 9 and then park her there for however long you want. Hey, if you like Night Sisters, I love Night Sisters, so I'll probably invest some Cairo into her later on. But this team right here will definitely get you at least a Challenge Tier 2. I'm not too sure if it'll 3-star it. You'll definitely 3-star Challenge Tier 1 with this team. I was able to do Challenge Tier 2, or sorry, Challenge Tier 1 and 3-starred it without Marin, and I had Talia in the mix. But this team, also fantastic team in Conquest too, so if you're not really big into Grand Arena, but you like territory battles, Rise of the Empire, this team's fantastic in Rise of the Empire. Like Conquest, this team's fantastic in Conquest as well. So you won't regret it. But these are the teams. This will get you 4 assault battles, and then once you 3-star them, you just sim it for the rest of your Galaxy of Hero career, and you'll start raking in more Zetas. Something actually, in addition to Zetas and notes, I believe it's Mother Talzin that has a Zeta event that comes around once a month, and it just gives you 2 Zeta pieces as well, and it's just something nice to have. And then same thing with Wicket, since we're going for C-3PO, we might as well get Wicket done, and Wicket also has that same style of event, so you'll get 4 Zeta pieces extra a month just for having Talzin and Wicket done as well. So moving on to our Zeta priority, we have Piet as the very first Zeta I would recommend. First Trap is what really starts the Imperial Trooper team to be what they are. Really, really fantastic team early game. Great team mid game, and some players still use them in the end game too. So, and then to assure that the Troopers turn meter train keeps on going, I would suggest getting Veer's Aggressive Tactician. Just make sure it assures that the Trooper squads will get turn meter, I think it's like 50% when an enemy dies, and that just helps out drastically. And next I would recommend everyone's fan favorite, Darth Vader's Merciless Massacre. Turns Darth Vader into an absolute monster. you won't regret putting this on, even though it's technically a Grand Arena only style. It finds uses in Conquest as well, but it just turns Darth Vader into okay person, into an outstanding character just from this one Zeta. Then next, I would suggest Bosk on the Hunt. It allows the Bounty Hunter team to regenerate both health and protection, and just makes the Bounty Hunter team that much more durable, especially if you have Grief on your team as well. Then next is Han Solo Shoot First. Very big staple into the game. It just assures that Han Solo will always shoot first. So anytime you start a match, Grand Arena or Conquest, Han Solo will gain a bonus turn and will be able to shoot and stun whichever character he wants. And it ignores taunt too, so he can target anyone he wants. And then we'll go into the CLS, It Binds All Things, which enables the CLS squad to be as sturdy as they are. Then, speaking of sturdiness, Chewbacca's Loyal Friend puts on a buff, Loyal Friend buff on 2 people, and basically they are immune to stun, have a bunch of extra tenacity and all these other things, and is a staple to the CLS squad. And then lastly, CLS's Rebel Maneuvers, which allows the Rebels to gain some turn meter as well. Now moving on to Omicrons. Omicrons are they're categorized in 3 different ways. You have your territory wars, your territory battles, and your raid Omicrons. Territory wars, guild versus guild kind of stuff. Territory battles, like Rise of the Empire. Then raids is raids. And these are the Omicrons that I would suggest. So we have Iden's exactly as planned. It makes Iden's shield effect basically allow the troopers to resurrect. If they have that buff, they resurrect. So it turns the trooper squad into something very, very scary and durable. For Qui-Gon Jinn's agility training, it just accelerates Jedi's damage, but specifically Jedi Knight Anakin's. It gets Jedi Knight Anakin an insane boost. It doesn't allow any other Jedi to die besides Qui-Gon Jinn. And then when he dies, all other Jedi get an extreme amount of offense based on speed, and translates to Jedi Knight Anakin gaining a bonus turn due to his unique, and you just hit his AoE and can just one-shot teams. It's crazy. You can put him on defense, you can take him on offense in Grand Arena. It's a great Omicron. Now for Territory Wars, Poggle's Hive Mind Tactics just turns the Geo team into a staple defensive team on Territory Wars. Very, very good, very easily accessible early Omicron, and guilds actually would appreciate it too if you're in a Territory War focused guild. Then also Nisa, since we are going for Nisa in this, her Bright Tree Village turns the Ewok team into something scary as well. And since you're relicking the Ewoks, if you go the Galactic Legend layup route, you'll find some use, or you'll get some use out of your Ewoks through there as well. But if you ask my opinion, my suggestion is just get the Grand Arena ones. We're already building their teams, and it'll help accelerate your account by getting you into higher Grand Arena brackets, and that equates to more crystals that you get every day. Now onto our Relic Order. I would suggest relicking Darth Vader to Relic 7 first, then Boss to R5. Then we'll focus on CLS Han and Chewie to R5. Then we'll go back into our Executor requirements with Piet at Relic 8, and then Boba Fett at Relic 8, and then Dengar to Relic 5. And then the rest of the requirements, CAD, BAM, IG, and Imperial TIE Fighter, or Imperial TIE Pilot to Relic 5. You won't find too much use out of the last 4 early on. BAM has some uses, but the rest is just, you're just going to relic them for their requirements. Now to recap, thank you so much for bearing with me through this presentation. I hope the new format is better. I didn't put my face cam on this time because it's not about me, it's about the presentation and the information I'm presenting to you. But again, thank you so much for watching, and if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. This particular guide, I feel, is the best investment into a new account. And even if you do decide to get some light speed bundles, I would still suggest you go down this route. None of the light speed bundles are going to get you Executor, but they might get you a little bit closer. But Executor, you just get him, and it's just amazing for your account. And then again, depending on your guild event token income, either go for Leia or Jabba. In my opinion, if you do have the guild event token currency coming in, and a lot of people agree with me, just get Jabba. Fantastic character, has a special event called Smuggler's Run 2, and that gets you slicing materials and mods. And if you want to know a secret to this game, no matter what team you build, the actual game, like the way to play this game even better than anyone else, is mods. Mods is so important, and that's why even with new Galactic Legends coming out, unless they get a special event that surpasses Smuggler's Run 2 and how effective Jabba is, I don't foresee him being overthrown. And then a great thing between Jabba and Leia is Proving Grounds. When you hit 4 million, you'll be able to complete every Proving Ground with these characters. So no matter what, you're going to have a great time if you follow this path. And again, thank you all so much for watching, and please leave your comments in the section below, and I hope you have a great day.